All right, so today we're doing a deep dive on Palantir Technologies,
Oh, yeah.
ticker symbol PLTR. And, maybe you're listening because you're thinking about an investment in them, or maybe you've just heard about all this buzz around their government contracts.
hmm
They've really been making some headlines.
They have. They've been in the news a lot lately. And I think what's really fascinating about them is that they're kind of like at the forefront of this whole AI wave.
Yeah, they're not just riding the wave, they're like steering it.
Exactly. And especially when it comes to how AI is being used by governments and these huge corporations.
Yeah, you're right. It's not your typical, self-driving car AI.
Right.
This is,
This is heavy duty stuff.
yeah, so if someone was looking at their stock, I mean, it's been a wild ride this
Oh,
year.
yeah, over 300% up.
Yeah. As of today, December 24th, 2024, it's sitting at $82.38.
Wow.
And, they even got added to the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. So it's like everyone's paying attention to them.
hmm
But some analysts are saying, like, hold on, is it sustainable?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Because, at their core, what Palantir does is they analyze massive amounts of data,
Mountains of data.
and they use that to help these organizations make these really critical decisions.
When you say organizations, you mean
Governments,
Right.
like national security, defense strategies, all that kind of
high stakes.
high-stakes stuff, exactly.
Yeah.
And they've landed some really huge deals recently,
Right. Like what?
like a $401 million contract extension with the U.S. Army.
Okay.
And that's for their Army Vantage platform, which basically uses AI to analyze all this battlefield data in real time.
Wow.
So you can imagine how valuable that is in a combat situation.
Yeah, that's crucial.
Absolutely. And that 401 million could even go up to 619 million. So, that tells you how seriously the Army is taking this.
That's a big vote of confidence.
Absolutely huge.
Okay, so that's a huge win for Palantir, but you mentioned that analysts are kind of being cautious.
Yeah.
What's their take on this?
Well, their concern is that right now Palantir's stock price is assuming that they're going to keep growing at this incredibly rapid pace.
Like indefinitely.
Yeah, like forever. And
That's a big gamble.
it's a huge gamble. One example is UBS. They gave Palantir a neutral rating and set a price target of $80.
Okay.
So basically they're saying, the current price might be a little bit inflated.
So the hype train might be going a little too fast.
Yeah, you could say that.
That's something investors need to keep in mind, right?
Absolutely. It's a key consideration.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole issue of volatility. Palantir's stock, it tends to swing really dramatically.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have a beta of 2, which basically means that their stock price moves twice as much as the overall market.
Okay.
So if the market goes up 1%, Palantir could go up 2%, but the reverse is also true.
Oh, so double the reward, double the risk.
Exactly, which makes it a riskier investment.
Gotcha. That's got to be a roller coaster for investors.
It can be.
Yeah. But, they are showing signs of strength, too. They
Mhm.
pulled in over $2 billion in revenue last year.
They did $2.2 billion to be exact, which is a 16.8% jump from the year before.
So that's solid growth.
It's great growth. And here's the thing, they actually turned a profit this year, about $210 million,
Wow.
which for a company that was previously known for, spending big,
Hmm.
this is a sign that they're figuring out this whole profitability game,
Yeah.
which investors love.
Okay, so they're growing, they're making money, they're landing these huge deals, but there are some yellow flags waving.
There are definitely some things to watch out for.
I'm guessing this is where things get really interesting for you, right, as an expert.
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets juicy because Palantir isn't just, sitting back and enjoying their success. They're making these huge moves.
Like what kind of moves?
Well, they're aiming to team up with some real giants in the tech world,
Okay, who are we talking about?
like OpenAI,
The ChatGPT folks.
the ChatGPT folks, exactly. And even Elon Musk's SpaceX, and they want to go after these massive government contracts together.
Wow, so it's like a tech dream team.
It is. It's like assembling the Avengers of the tech world.
So what would that look like? I mean, how would that actually work?
Well, the idea is that they would combine their expertise and their technology to create these incredibly powerful solutions for the government.
Okay.
You can imagine the possibilities if you combine Palantir's data analytics capabilities with OpenAI's language processing and SpaceX's,
Yeah.
space technology.
Yeah, that's pretty mind-blowing.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And it would definitely shake things up in the defense industry.
Oh, I bet. I mean, would other companies be able to compete with that?
It would be tough. It would be a whole new ball game.
So we've got this high growth, we've got these big contracts, we've got these potential partnerships that could, change the whole game. But there's this underlying concern, can they keep up this pace?
Yeah, that's the big question mark.
I mean, can they deliver on these expectations?
Right, because the expectations are sky high.
Okay, so we kind of laid out the basics here. You know, what Palantir does, how their stock's performing the big, wins the concerns.
Right.
But to really understand where they're going, we need to kind of dig a little deeper into how they got here.
Absolutely. Every company has a story. And Palantir's is particularly fascinating.
Okay, so take us back to the beginning. Where did this all start?
All right, so rewind back to 2003, Silicon Valley.
Okay.
Palantir was founded with this idea of building software to help intelligence agencies and financial institutions combat fraud and terrorism.
Wow. So from day one, they were dealing with some pretty heavy stuff.
Oh, yeah. They were using data to tackle some of the world's toughest challenges right from the get-go.
Not your average startup story.
Not at all. And one of the key figures in those early days was Peter Thiel.
Oh, yeah, the co-founder of PayPal.
Exactly. His involvement brought not just financial backing, but also this kind of Silicon Valley aura, the sense of, we're here to change the world.
Thiel's a fascinating character, isn't he? He's like a bit of a maverick.
He is. He's definitely not afraid to speak his mind. And, some might say he's controversial, but he's definitely got a unique perspective.
And that same boldness is kind of woven into Palantir's DNA, right?
Absolutely. They've never been afraid to push boundaries, both technologically and in terms of the clients they work with.
I can imagine that's led to some raised eyebrows over the years.
Oh, definitely. And probably a few sleepless nights for their PR team.
It sounds like their story's full of twists and turns.
Yeah.
We could probably do a whole other deep dive just on the controversies surrounding Palantir.
Well, we could easily fill a whole episode with that stuff.
But for today, let's stick to the core of their business. You know, how they've become such a dominant force in the data analytics world.
Okay, sounds good.
So they started with this focus on government and finance, but those are just two pieces of the puzzle, right?
Right. It's interesting to see how that initial focus kind of shaped their trajectory. They could have gone down the route of like social media analytics or consumer data.
Yeah.
But they carved out this very specific niche for themselves.
And that niche led them to become like essential partners for some of the most powerful organizations in the world, right?
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Intelligence agencies, law enforcement, the military, they all rely on Palantir's software to make sense of this massive amount of data they collect.
It's like they're giving these organizations a superpower.
Yeah, it's like giving them X-ray vision, the ability to see through the noise and connect the dots and make sense of the chaos.
Okay, I'm starting to get a clearer picture of why Palantir is so valuable, especially in these like high-stakes worlds.
Yeah.
But let's flip the script for a second.
Okay.
They're working with these incredibly powerful tools. So what about the potential downsides?
Yeah, that's the big question that follows Palantir everywhere they go. Whenever you have this level of data access and analytical capability, there's always the potential for misuse.
Yeah, we can't just ignore the potential risks while we're celebrating the advancements.
Absolutely. It's a crucial part of the conversation.
So how does Palantir address those concerns?
Well, that's something we need to explore further. How transparent are they about their operations? What safeguards are in place? How do they balance the need for security with the right to privacy?
Those are all crucial questions.
They are. And they're not easy to answer.
All right, so let's unpack those concerns then. How does Palantir handle this ethical tightrope walk of wielding such powerful technology?
It's a tricky one.
Yeah. What steps are they taking to ensure responsible use?
Well, that's a great place to start. It's crucial to understand how they're navigating this sensitive landscape.
Okay, so let's dive into that next.
Yeah, it is tricky because, there's no simple answer when it comes to Palantir and this whole idea of responsible use.
All right.
I mean, they've definitely taken steps to address these concerns.
Okay.
But, whether those steps are enough is a matter of ongoing debate.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit.
Yeah.
What specific steps have they taken, and what are people saying about those efforts?
Well, one of their key arguments is that their technology is actually designed to enhance human decision-making,
Okay.
not to replace it.
So it's not about like taking humans out of the loop.
Exactly. It's not about replacing human judgment.
Okay.
They call it operational AI.
Okay.
And it's all about building systems that work with humans, not instead of them.
So it's more like a really powerful tool in the hands of experts.
Right.
Rather than some kind of like autonomous, all-seeing AI that's, making decisions on its own.
Exactly. And they argue that this approach actually helps mitigate some of the risks associated with AI, like bias or lack of transparency.
Okay.
Because you still have humans in the loop making the final call.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But are people buying that argument? Are there any critics pushing back on that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Some critics argue that even with humans in the loop, there's still a risk of bias creeping in,
Hmm.
especially if the data that's being fed into the system is already biased.
Right. It's like the old garbage in, garbage out problem.
Exactly. Even with the best intentions, if the data itself is flawed, the results could be problematic.
Yeah, that's a valid point. So even with these safeguards in place, there's still this underlying concern about the potential for bias.
Right. And then there are also concerns that Palantir's focus on government and defense clients, inherently raises the risk of their technology being used for surveillance or other purposes that some might find ethically questionable.
Yeah, that's a big one. I
Yeah.
mean, it's one thing to help a company optimize its supply chain or, whatever,
Right.
but it's quite another to provide tools that could be used for mass surveillance
Yeah.
or tracking individuals.
Exactly. And that's where the debate gets really heated.
Okay.
Some people argue that Palantir shouldn't be working with governments at all,
Hmm.
given the potential for misuse.
While others might say that, those governments need the most advanced tools to protect their citizens and maintain national security.
Right. It's a really tough one.
It is. There are no easy answers there. So we've got this tension between the potential benefits of Palantir's technology and the potential risks, especially when it comes to government use. How are they navigating that tightrope walk?
Well, they've implemented a number of safeguards and ethical guidelines to try to address these concerns.
Okay, like what?
Well, for one, they have an internal ethics board that reviews potential contracts and projects.
Okay.
And they've publicly stated that they won't work with clients who they believe will use their technology in harmful ways.
So they're trying to be more proactive and transparent about their decision-making process.
Exactly. And they've also invested in developing tools and features that enhance transparency and accountability within their platform.
Okay.
For example, they have auditing capabilities that allow clients to track how their data is being used and who has access to it.
Okay, so that's a good step.
It is. It's a step in the right direction.
But it also sounds like they're walking a fine line.
They are.
On the one hand, they need to protect your intellectual property
Right.
and maintain a certain level of secrecy to be successful in this world.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, they need to be more transparent to address these ethical concerns and build trust with the public.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
And it's one that they're constantly grappling with as they grow and evolve as a company.
All right, so they're taking steps, they're implementing safeguards, they're having these tough internal conversations. But let's be honest, they're not doing this just out of the goodness of their hearts, right?
Right.
There's a business imperative at play here, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Addressing these ethical concerns is not just about being a good corporate citizen.
Mhm.
It's also about protecting their reputation, attracting top talent, and securing those lucrative contracts.
Because in today's world,
Mm-hmm.
Consumers and investors are increasingly holding companies accountable for their ethical behavior.
Exactly. It's not just about the bottom line anymore.
Right.
And Palantir knows that they've seen what can happen when a tech company gets embroiled in ethical controversies.
Yeah.
It can damage their brand, alienate their customers, and even impact their stock price.
So it's smart business to be proactive about these issues.
It is.
But it's also, hopefully, about doing the right thing.
Right. And ultimately, it's up to each individual to decide whether they believe Palantir is doing enough to address these ethical concerns.
So no easy answers, but a lot to think about.
Yeah.
All right, let's shift gears a bit. You mentioned earlier that Palantir is aiming to team up with some major players like OpenAI and SpaceX to go after even bigger government contracts. That sounds like a huge power move.
It is. It's a sign of their ambition.
Hmm.
They're not content with just being a leading data analytics company. They want to be at the forefront of this whole AI revolution shaping the future of defense and national security.
But would that make them even more controversial? I mean, imagine the outcry if a company like Palantir, already facing all this scrutiny over its ethical practices, suddenly gains even more power and influence over government decision-making.
Oh, there would definitely be pushback. And it would raise even more questions about accountability, transparency, and the potential for misuse.
But wouldn't it also give them even more resources and leverage to address those concerns? I mean, if they're working with companies like OpenAI, which has been very vocal about the importance of ethical AI development, wouldn't that kind of force them to step up their game?
That's a good point. Collaborating with companies that have strong ethical frameworks could actually help Palantir strengthen its own internal practices.
So it's like they'd be held to a higher standard by their partners.
Exactly. But it would also put those partners under the microscope.
Yeah.
People would be asking, why are you working with Palantir, given their track record?
So it's a high risk, high reward scenario for everyone involved.
Absolutely. And it would be a fascinating development to watch unfold.
Okay, so we've got this potential consortium, this ambition to reshape the defense industry.
Hmm.
But even if they pull it off, it's not like they're operating in a vacuum, right?
Right.
There are other players in the game, other companies vying for those same contracts, that same level of influence.
Oh, absolutely. Palantir might be a big name in the world of data analytics. But they're not the only ones. They face competition from these established tech giants like Microsoft, Amazon, Google,
Oh, yeah.
all of whom have their own data analytics platforms and services.
So it's like a David and Goliath situation, but maybe with multiple Goliaths this time.
You could say that, but remember David had a few tricks up his sleeve,
Okay.
and so does Palantir.
All right, I'm intrigued. What are their secret weapons? What makes them stand out from the crowd?
Well, one of their key strengths is their deep expertise in handling complex, highly sensitive data. They built their reputation working with intelligence agencies and the military.
Right.
So they're used to dealing with the toughest data challenges out there.
So they're not intimidated by big data.
Not at all. In fact, they thrive on it.
Okay.
And they've developed some very sophisticated tools and techniques for cleaning, organizing, and analyzing these massive data sets.
Okay.
They're also known for their ability to customize their solutions to meet the specific needs of their clients.
Which makes sense given their background. They're not just selling off-the-shelf software.
Yep.
They're building bespoke solutions for some of the most demanding clients in the world.
Exactly. And that's where their experience really shines through.
Yeah.
They understand the intricacies of working with governments and defense agencies. They know the regulations. They speak the language.
So they've got this deep expertise, this ability to handle the toughest data challenges. What else sets them apart?
Well, another key differentiator is their focus on what they call operational AI, which we talked about earlier.
Right.
They're not just building algorithms to analyze data in a vacuum.
Mm.
They're building systems that are designed to be used by humans in real-world operations.
So it's not just about generating insights.
Right.
It's about turning those insights into actions, into decisions that make a real difference on the ground.
Exactly. And that requires a deep understanding of the customer's workflow, their decision-making processes, and the specific challenges they're facing.
I can see how that would be a really valuable proposition for those government and defense clients. I mean, they're not just buying software.
Right.
They're buying a partnership, a team of experts who
Yep.
can help them solve their most pressing problems.
Exactly. And that's something that Palantir has cultivated very carefully. They have a reputation for being very hands-on with their clients, working closely with them to understand their needs and tailor their solutions accordingly.
Okay, so deep expertise, operational AI, a focus on partnerships. That's a pretty strong arsenal,
It is.
but it's a tough market out there.
Yeah,
How are they actually faring against these tech giants? Are they winning those contracts?
they are. And they're winning some big ones.
Okay.
In addition to their work with the U.S. Army, they've secured contracts with the Air Force, the Navy, the Department of Homeland Security,
Wow.
and numerous other government agencies around the world.
So they're not just surviving, they're thriving in this high-stakes environment.
They are, and that's a testament to their capabilities and their ability to compete with the best in the business.
But it's not all smooth sailing, right?
Of course not.
I mean, there have to be some challenges, some bumps in the road.
Oh, definitely. And that's what we'll delve into next.
All right, let's talk about those challenges. What are some of the biggest hurdles they're facing?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is managing their growth. They've expanded rapidly in recent years, and that kind of rapid expansion can put a strain on any organization.
It's like they're trying to build a plane while they're flying it, right?
Exactly.
You need to keep innovating, keep winning contracts, keep growing your team and your infrastructure, all while making sure that you don't lose sight of like your core values and your long-term goals.
It's a tough balancing act for sure.
Yeah. And they've had to make some tough decisions along the way, right?
You have.
And they've faced criticism for some of those decisions, particularly around their hiring practices and their work-life balance.
Yeah, that's been a recurring theme.
I've heard that they have a reputation for being a pretty intense place to work. Long hours, high pressure, a lot of secrecy. Is that accurate?
It's definitely a demanding environment. They have this very mission-driven culture, and they expect a lot from their employees. They're looking for people who are brilliant-driven and willing to go the extra mile. And that can be both exhilarating and exhausting.
Yeah. It sounds like a bit of a double-edged sword.
It is.
On the one hand, you're working on cutting-edge technology, you're solving real-world problems, you're surrounded by incredibly talented people.
Right.
But on the other hand, it sounds like it could be pretty all-consuming.
It can be. And, they've faced criticism for not doing enough to promote work-life balance
Hmm.
and for creating a culture that some have described as cult-like.
Wow. That's a pretty strong accusation.
Yeah.
How have they responded to that kind of criticism?
Well, they've acknowledged that they have a demanding work environment,
Okay.
but they've also defended their culture, arguing that it's what allows them to attract and retain top talent
Hmm.
and to achieve their ambitious goals.
Okay.
They've also made some efforts to improve work-life balance, but it remains a challenge for them.
Yeah, it sounds like a classic Silicon Valley dilemma.
It is.
The drive for innovation and disruption often comes at a personal cost. It's
Right.
that whole move fast and break things mentality.
Hmm.
But at some point, you have to ask yourself, what are we breaking?
Yeah,
And is it worth it?
that's the question.
Yeah.
And that's a conversation that's happening across the tech industry right now.
Mm.
People are starting to question the long-term sustainability of this kind of work culture,
Yeah.
and Palantir is definitely part of that conversation.
So they're facing these internal challenges, this pressure
Mhm.
to maintain their unique culture,
Right.
while also addressing concerns about work-life balance and employee well-being.
Hmm.
But they're also facing these external pressures, right?
Oh, yeah.
Competition, market volatility, regulatory scrutiny. It's a lot to juggle.
It's a lot. It's a constant balancing act.
Yeah. So how do you think they're going to handle all of this? I mean,
Well,
what's your take on their future?
Well, it's tough to say for sure. The tech world is constantly evolving. Hmm.
And the competition is fierce. But I think Palantir has a few things going for them.
Like what?
Well, first of all, they have a very clear vision and a very strong sense of purpose. They know what they want to achieve, and they're not afraid to take risks to get there.
Hmm. That's definitely been apparent throughout their history.
Exactly.
It's
And secondly, they have a deep understanding of their target market. They know the needs of their clients, and they're constantly innovating to meet those needs.
Okay.
And thirdly, they have a talented and dedicated team. They've attracted some of the brightest minds in the industry, and they've created a culture that fosters creativity and collaboration.
So even though they're facing these challenges, they're also well equipped to overcome them.
I think so. But ultimately, it's going to come down to their ability to adapt to the changing landscape and to stay ahead of the curve.
Sounds like a constant race.
It is. And it's one that they can't afford to lose.
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We've talked about their technology, their clients, their growth trajectory, their ethical considerations, their culture, their challenges, their ambitions. It's been a fascinating journey.
It has, and it's left me with a lot to think about.
Me too. But before we get too introspective, let's shift gears and talk about what all this means for you, our listener.
Okay.
You're the one who's looking into Palantir, and we've given you a lot to process.
We have. It's a lot to take in, but that's the nature of a deep dive,
Right.
We're not here to give you simple answers or tell you what to think.
Mm,
We're here to equip you with the information and the context you need to form your own conclusions.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, knowing what we've learned today, what are some of the key takeaways? What should you be thinking about as you continue your own research into Palantir?
Well, I think the first takeaway is that Palantir is a complex and often controversial company.
Hmm.
They're not easily categorized or pigeonholed.
Right.
They're operating at the intersection of technology, government, defense, and ethics. And that makes them both fascinating and challenging to understand.
So don't go in with any preconceived notions. Be open to the nuances, the complexities, the contradictions.
Exactly. And the second takeaway is that Palantir is a company with a very clear mission and a very strong sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They believe they're doing important work and they're not afraid to take risks or to challenge the status quo.
Right.
That can be both admirable and concerning depending on your perspective.
So it's important to consider your own values and beliefs as you evaluate Palantir.
Mm-hmm.
What are your red lines? What are you comfortable with? And what are you not?
Exactly. And the third takeaway is that Palantir is a company at a crossroads.
Okay.
They're facing internal challenges, external pressures, and increasing scrutiny over their ethical practices. How they navigate these challenges will determine their future success.
It's a high-stakes game, and there are no guarantees.
Right. But one thing is for sure, Palantir is a company that forces us to think deeply about the role of technology in our lives and in our world.
Absolutely.
And that's a conversation worth having.
It is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we leave you with a final thought. The story of Palantir is still being written.
It is. The choices they make, the paths they pursue, the impact they have, it's all unfolding before our eyes.
And it's up to each of us to pay attention, to stay informed, and to engage in this ongoing conversation about the role of technology in shaping our world.
Absolutely.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.
Thanks for listening.